So, in camp edge fashion, this race starts on a short grass prologue that you really have to be warmed up for, and you really have to focus on your positioning very early on in this race because you will bottleneck into this very rooty, narrow, wooded section. Early on in this race, you typically get, a single file through this section. So you really have to focus, and kind of be aggressive earlier than you might want to be, because single file, and the first top 5 riders are just going to hammer. And, if you're not aggressive early enough or focus early enough on your riding, you're going to lose time early, very early. So after this tight, rooty single track, you do get on some double track here-ish, no roots, kind of an incline. And you do, you really have to hammer it here because this is one of the few spots that you can. This is where I'm a little weaker than the other riders, so I do lose time here. But then you get back into the woods, and it's rooty, and you're zipping in and out of the trees again. I did choose my slowest lap here to show, to show this course. This is from 2022. I had a bit of a struggle, and on this lap, just with pace. But here, it's a good spot to get some nutrition in, maybe a gel, some water. Double track is what I was doing here, is taking a gel. For me, but it is one of those things where, you get past. If you let off here. Because some people choose to hammer it on those types of sections when, but in particular for this lap, I was, playing it safe. If you're feeling really good, you can really get going on these double track sections. In this section, typically the sand gets kicked up and it gets really, really loose, and it's hard to hit these corners as hard as you'd like. Especially this corner right here, it's really loose. So, I've found pedaling through it helps, but the sand is just so loose and so deep there. This section, you really have to focus on your momentum. There's a lot of corners that you need to you have to kind of ride them well, or you'll lose a lot of time because it's flat and it's hard to explode out of these corners. If you're not riding well, you'll lose a lot of time. But if you're riding well, you can make up a lot of time in these corners too, Again, these are the corners you're really going to need to keep your momentum up on. It's just this section in particular. Again, this course doesn't have a lot of elevation change. So focusing on your cornering is more important on this course than most. It's really hard to make up your time if you mess up. This is a pretty fun section here. You do get a little bit of a descent. And then if you stay to the left, you run over the rock garden, which I had a lot of success on in 2022. I do recommend pre-riding it prior to trying it in the race. But, I was able to pass at least one person per lap. And this is really fun. There's typically some jumps that you can jump into the corners on. I rode this section, pretty well the last couple years. Was able to make up a lot of time, catch some folks, which is frustrating when you ride this part well and you get into the double track and every little bit that you made on these sections you lose because you're a little weaker on on that type of terrain. A little bit of a climb here. Again, it's not a lot, but and then you have some really fun berms after this climb. During short track, we typically ride up those. We don't get a chance to go down them. But, just keep your mentals straight here because I went through that ribbon there on the first lap. You get really booking it down that hill and you're not thinking. Boom, right through the ribbon. And again, some really tight single track going through the woods. So you have to make your passes prior to these sections. Maybe ride harder on sections that you don't necessarily ride as good on. maybe take it easy on sections you do a little bit better on. Again, back into the woods, this really tight single track that's windy, rooty, really, really hard to navigate and keep any type of momentum, especially when it's flat or a false flat. This is one of the bigger climbs in the race. It's not necessarily steep, but it's not a fun climb. The roots really add to the technicality of the climb. So here's a little descent. I really like this section. I can really get booking it. I feel like I made up a lot of time in this section last year and the year prior too. Once again, you get into these like wider double track sections. It's a really good place to take your nutrition if you need it. Like for me, I lose a lot of time in these sections anyways. And then another fun descent here. Again, really tight single track here. And you have to be able to work your way around trees. That is key in doing well on this race course. Learning how to really get through sections where your bars are the exact distance between the two trees. And here's another, climb. Not terrible. It brings you into this section where there's like a short switchback climbs. This is a fun little section. I often have fond experiences on. You're able to kind of get a idea. You see a lot of switchbacks. You see the riders in front of you. It's only a couple seconds from the top, so you can kind of gauge like, hey, if I go a little bit harder for the next mile, I might be able to catch those 4 people that are in front of me on the switchbacks. Like you see them there, ahead of you there, and you get a good idea of who's behind you. You get a good idea of who's in front of you. I really like this section. And then this descent here, always able to make up some time. If it rains or anything, that section gets really sloppy. Back onto this double track. And then once you get onto this climb, you have plenty of room to pick lines, and you get back into some single track. This section is really fun as well. A few cutbacks. Here, you really need to focus and ride cleanly, because it is, some tight corners, but the descent is pretty fast. So you could really lose some time here if you're not riding well. But then you get on this double track, and it takes you out to another section in the course, which is different terrain. It's back into, you go through the campgrounds, and then you go back into the woods here, where it's pretty rooty in this section. But again, this section is really, really, really tight. It's probably the tightest section, and it always feels like it's always wet. So you need to hit the roots a little bit harder. You will slip around. Just kind of keep pedaling it out. But this is towards the end of the loop, so you do get a little bit of a breather after this section when you hit the grass. So you might kind of maybe have a higher cadence and ride it hard through here. Spits you onto the gravel here, and then this section takes you out to the grass at the finish line. And if, you're with a rider that's in front of you fairly close, now is the time to really push that, push the pace. If you're like when you're final lap and you want to, and you're going to want to sprint, because if you wait till you get to the grass, the sprint, you're going to have bad positioning. You want to be in front of the rider before you hit the corner, because you can't explode out of this corner fast enough to make up time on the rider in front of you. That was a big mistake I made last year, trying to set up the rider in front of me to pass them out of this corner, but the finish line was way too close to the corner.